لو أنزلنا هذا القرآن على جبل لرأيته خاشعا متصدعا من خشية الله.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الصلاة والسلام على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Tonight, inshallah, we're still in Surah al-Baqarah, ayah number 269. And I asked you a few days ago, actually yesterday night, to take a look at it and possibly read the tafsir, inshallah. And so if you have your Qur'ans, please take them out and open up that particular page if you would like to follow up on what we're saying. Yesterday, I ended the discussion basically saying that Adam alayhi salam was endowed with those three remarkable gifts that made him, and by consequence his descendants, able to cope with the challenges of the world and to basically lead relatively successful lives and relatively successful existence. And those three resources that Adam alayhi salam was given were basically aql and free will, and the third one was al-asma, right? Al-ma'rifah, knowledge, right? So aql was mind, free will, al-irada, and al-ma'rifatul insaniya, as I said a few days ago, that is the cumulative knowledge of humanity. Okay? So aql, ma'rifah, and irada. And the question that I pose to you, if you have aql, obviously you have a mind, and you have lots and lots of data, lots and lots of information about the world, and you have the free will to act upon that knowledge. Is that enough? All of that is obviously very necessary and is a requirement for successful existence, but what I claim tonight is that the three elements that were given to Adam alayhi salam are not sufficient. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala granted him a fourth resource, and that is the one that is mentioned in the ayah in Surah al-Baqarah that I spoke to you about briefly yesterday. يُؤْتِ الْحِكْمَةَ مَنْ يَشَاءُ وَمَنْ يُؤْتَ الْحِكْمَةَ فَقَدْ أُوتِيَ خَيْرًا كَثِيرًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants wisdom, al-hikmah, to whomever He wills. And whomsoever is granted wisdom has been granted one of the greatest and most beautiful endowments in the world. Right? Al-hikmah. وَمَا يَذَّكَّرُ إِلَّا أُولُو الْأَلْبَابِ. And it is only people who have albab, and albab is uqul, minds. Minds that think are the ones who are able to capture that meaning and understand it according to the ayah. What is that hikmah? Because there is aql, there is irada, and there is ma'rifah. Right? Mind, free will, and knowledge. Al-asma that Adam alayhi salam was given, and by consequence, inshallah, all of us. And the fourth element in that equation is al-hikmah. What is hikmah? Hikmah is often translated in English as the word wisdom, right? They use the word wisdom. However, I really want you to go through this quick exercise, the brothers and sisters from the Arab community, if you know your Arabic. They use the word hikmah in a multitude of ways, like hakim, for example. Hakim is someone that is wise, right? But hakim is also a thinker. Hakim is also a physician. In many parts of the rural Arab worlds, they still use the word hakim when they talk about a doctor or a physician, right? There's also hakim, the philosopher. What about hakam? Hakam is judge, right? Hakam is judge. And then there's also hakim. Hakim is ruler or leader, right? And then there's also hakam in sports, and that is the referee, right? You see all of those words? They're all derived from the word hikmah. Linguistically, and this is the most amazing thing, linguistically, al-hakmu min al-man'. وَالْحَكِيمُ هُوَ الْمَانِعُ وَالْحِكْمَةُ هِيَ الْمَنْعُ. What does that mean? Hikmah is prevention. Al-Hakim is the preventor. The halter, that little metal thing that goes into that mouth of a horse in order to prevent it from running so fast, it is called hakama. حاء كاف ميم تاء مربوطة. حكمة، الحكمة. استخدام الحكمة كي يمنع الفرس من الجموح. To prevent, a horse from running so fast. What is the connection here? When the scholars of linguistics were asked, why is it that the word for man', for prevention, is used in the meaning of wisdom, they say, لأنه يعني منع الظلم. The prevention of aggression, the prevention of inequity, the prevention of bad things to happen. And this essentially is what a judge does in Islam, right? In Islam, in Islamic law, the primary objective of the judge is the prevention of injustice. Is the prevention of injustice, right? A similar word to it that we've been talking about is aql, right? Aql from iqal. Iqal is the halter, is the reins that you use with the horse. They used to call them iqal. What do we use the word iqal for in the present day? The iqal, right? The Khalijis. They have the iqal, which is this thing that the little tubular thing that they wrap on top of the hatta that they wear, right? Why do they call it iqal? Because it looks like a rope. The rope that they use in order to control horses. Al-iqal is the same like al-hakama or al-man'a. But are those two words the same? They are different, and I'll tell you why in a second. It is interesting, however, that at the end of the ayah in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about hikmah, He talks about wisdom. وَمَنْ يُؤْتَ الْحِكْمَةَ فَقَدْ أُوتِيَ خَيْرًا كَثِيرًا وَمَا يَذَّكَّرُ إِلَّا أُولُو الْأَلْبَابِ. Only people who have uqul, who have minds, will be able to see this. And I'll show you inshallah in a second that the connection between the two words is a lot more organic than you think. Right? This is not just some generic expression in the Qur'an. What is the difference between aql and hikmah? I said again, Adam alayhi salam was given aql, mind, he was given free will, and he was given al-ma'rifah, knowledge. And the fourth that he was given is basically al-hikmah or wisdom. So think of it this way. If the crown on top of that mind of yours is knowledge, right? Then the jewel of that crown is wisdom. Let me repeat that. If the crown on top of the mind is knowledge, the jewel of the crown is hikmah, is wisdom. Okay? What is the difference between hikmah and wisdom? قال العلماء كل حكيم عاقل ليس كل عاقل حكيم. Everyone that is wise, that has hikmah, obviously has aql as well, has mind. But not everyone that has a mind also has wisdom or hikmah. Why? Because as I said before, that minute when the brain of Adam alayhi salam evolved into mind, as I said yesterday, when al-mukh evolved into aql, right? Would you not agree with me that every single one of us has a mind? All of us have minds. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has already granted you that. But al-hikmah is given to selective people who exert the effort to use the mind. And I'll tell you how, inshallah ta'ala, in a second. Look at the Qur'an, for example. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about Yahya alayhi salam. Ya Yahya, خُذِ الْكِتَابَ بِقُوَّةٍ وَآتَيْنَاهُ الْحُكْمَ صَبِيًّا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about Yahya alayhi salam that he was given knowledge at a very young age. He was given wisdom, rather, at a very young age. Some of the scholars say that al-hukm here means an-nubuwwah. And Imam Malik says, an-nubuwwah hiya ra'sul hikmah. Prophethood is the highest level of wisdom that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could give any human being. But again, it's something that is granted. Hiba min ar-Rahman subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is a gift that is given to you. It's not something that you can develop on your own. It is something that is handed over to you from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He talks about Musa alayhi salam. فَلَمَّا بَلَغَ أَشُدَّهُ وَاسْتَوَى آتَيْنَاهُ حُكْمًا وَعِلْمًا. When Musa alayhi salam reached the age of adulthood and became very strong, Allah gave him hikmah and knowledge. See, they're two different things. Al-ma'rifah wal-hikmah are two different things. Knowledge and wisdom are two different things. Knowledge is the data, and wisdom is how you process that data. I will also demonstrate that inshallah in a couple of seconds. Right? What does Allah say about Luqman alayhi salam? Luqman is often known in Islamic literature as Luqman al-Hakim, Luqman the wise. Right? قَدْ آتَيْنَا لُقْمَانَ الْحِكْمَةَ. Again, see the same thing. We have granted Luqman wisdom. It's as if you're here, right? You're a worshiper, you're a good human being, and your mind is searching for wisdom. I need wisdom. I need to be able to make decisions in my life, to use that knowledge that Allah has given me in the appropriate manner. Subhanallah. And there's something very, very important I would like, inshallah, to show you. I want you to think of it this way. Your aql is the hardware, right? And ma'rifah, knowledge, is the data. That's the files that you're working with. And what would hikmah be? Your operating system. That's the operating system. Okay? So you have hardware, you have software, and you have data. This is just an easier way for you guys to memorize it, inshallah. Aql, mind, is the hardware. This is how you're wired. And hikmah, which is wisdom, that is your software, the operating system. And the third one, hikmah is the software, and data, knowledge, that is what you have to work with. So imagine this. So you have a Word file on a flash drive that you need to read and access. What do you need? You need a computer. But what would you need on that computer? You need an operating system, preferably a Mac operating system, right? So you need hardware and you need software. If you have hardware and you have a file without an operating system, you won't be able to achieve anything. If you have hardware and software but you don't have any data to process, then what's the point of having them, right? If you have the Windows CD and you have your Word files on a USB flash drive and you don't have a computer, you're out of luck, right? And don't tell me you're going to use the tablet. It's not part of this example. All right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants you to utilize those three. Your hardware, your software, and your data. Now, what is the fourth element about Adam alayhi salam that I talked about? The fourth endowment that I didn't mention? Free will. What is free will? Yes, but in this example, what would free will be? Free will is the user? No, the user is you. Free will is your power supply. Free will is your power supply, right? Because without free will, the computer is not going to be working to begin with. Okay? Is this a good example? Memorize this. This is what you have. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has endowed you with. Power supply, that's free will. Hardware, that is your aql, your mind. Software, operating system, that is hikmah. In order for all of this to help you process al-ma'rifah, the knowledge of this world. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, brothers and sisters, wants you to process knowledge in a way that benefits humanity. For example, if you look at university professors, let me digress here for a second, this is an important point. If you look at university professors, especially in philosophy or political science or social sciences in general, they're often known as thinkers, right? Some of them, would really publish a book every year, so many papers, right? And it's so hard to read academic books. It's so hard, like you flip through the pages, they use really complex lexicon, they use very, very hard to understand words, very complex sentence structures. They call that sophisticated, we just call that idiotic, right? If you're a student that went through that, you'll understand what I'm talking about. Because in America, academics have been taught the notion that you need to make your knowledge as inaccessible as possible to the general public. That's why they actually look with an eye of resentment at articles that are published in non-academic journals. Like, you cannot even quote that in any paper. Oh, that's not an academic journal, we can't quote that. Well, it's a lot more accessible and it makes a lot more sense than your academic journal, but you can't use it, right? And this is one of the illnesses of American academia. And take it from someone who has spent so many years in academia, right? The academic American system is not designed in a socially responsible way. In order for the academic construct to produce a good, socially beneficial idea, it takes 20 to 30 years. And again, that doesn't apply to engineering or other fields of science, where there might be an industrial application that is immediately available. I'm talking about the realm of ideas. I'm talking about the social sciences and philosophy. They are not socially responsible. In fact, when you apply for grad school, for instance, and I'm not trying to deter anyone from applying to grad school, I'm just showing you the realities of it. When you apply to grad school, they want to see your GRE scores, right? They want to see your GPA, they want to see your personal statement, and the fourth one, the three miserable recommendation letters, right? So people who understand that game and can position their applications in a way to be admitted, they usually get admitted. And here it is, I'll say this, please don't be offended if I say that. Admission criteria in the American academic system favors sociopaths. They favor sociopaths, people who are isolated from society, people who are not activists, people who don't have opinions of their own, people who are not involved in their communities. They're just capable of getting the 4.0, so they attended every single class. You know, every single God-given class, they attended it, they went to every single office hours. They spent so much time with their professors, that's why they were able to get those recommendation letters, right? And they got very high scores on their GREs, and that's it, and they get admitted. But other people who I think are more qualified to excel in the academic field, they don't, and that is why there's this distance between knowledge and hikmah in this country. It takes 25, 30 years for hikmah to process and to reach the average person. So you, as a Muslim who wants to pursue an academic career, wants to go for a master's or a PhD, you should always have that on your mind. How can my research contribute to the betterment of my society? Even if it takes a few years. But the topic that you choose for your research adventure has to be socially relevant, and that is truly the essence of hikmah, right? Hikmah has to compel you to action, to do something good in your society, to do something good in your community. Let's go back to the ayah. وَمَنْ يُؤْتَ الْحِكْمَةَ فَقَدْ أُوتِيَ خَيْرًا كَثِيرًا. The Prophet ﷺ once saw Abdullah ibn Abbas, and he was young, and Abdullah showed that keenness for knowledge and learning. And the Prophet loved him. He was his cousin, right? So without any introductions, without saying anything, he went to Abdullah ibn Abbas and he hugged him. And he put his hand on Abdullah's forehead and he said to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allahumma a'tihi al-hikmah. Not knowledge. He didn't say, Allah, give him knowledge, make him a great scholar. He said, Ya Allah, give him hikmah. Give him the ability to draw lines between right and wrong. The ability to take knowledge and process it the right way, so that it reaches the right people, so that it makes the right changes in society. And that was one of the most unique things about Abdullah ibn Abbas when he grew up, right? He became a scholar of hadith, everyone knows that. He was a collector of hadith. But deep inside, Abdullah ibn Abbas had one quality that most people of his time did not have. He knew when to use the hadith and how, and to speak to which audience. Because the word that comes out of your mouth can become a disaster or can become knowledge and wisdom depending on the time and the circumstances. And let me give you an example, a story that is often told in our community. They say that in one of the masajid, they invited them to an interfaith dialogue, right? So they wanted to send a new face, so they selected someone who was very knowledgeable, but has not had a share of public speaking, but they know that that person is very, very knowledgeable. Now that brother went to the interfaith meeting and asked the organizers of the event, how much time do I have? So they told him, you have 10 minutes. So he said, okay, alhamdulillah, bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, rolled up his sleeves, and then started saying, well, first thing I need to tell you guys that you're all kuffar. And the second thing, you're all going to hellfire. And the third, unless you listen to every single word I say, you have absolutely no chance. And that definitely got their attention. Nobody left the room, but they all sat there in shock, listening to what the brother has to tell them. Islam says this, and Islam says that, the Prophet Muhammad is this, Allah is that, this is halal, this is haram, this causes you to go to hellfire, the Bible is this, the Torah is that. Now, let me ask you a question. Was there anything in what the brother said that is actually not true? I think the proper answer is, I don't know, I wasn't there. Right? But if you were there and he only shared truths about Islam, he shared with them data. He shared with them knowledge, ilm, ma'rifah, that's all. Every single thing he shared with them was truthful, but was it the wise thing to do? You see the discrepancy? Not every truth should be shared with every person. Not every statement should be made anytime, right? I have to look at my circumstances, I have to look at my audience, I have to process my words, I have to think of the best approach and the best angle. Wallahi, brothers and sisters, there was a brother in the community, he's here tonight, and he tells me that he has been making da'wah. There's this guy at work and he's trying to make da'wah because he's a very kind person. And he has been working at that job for about 10 years. And over the past 10 years, he did not talk to him a single time about Islam. Not a single time. But every time he asks me, so my friend so-and-so, so he did this and we went to this place and he asked about this and we talked about that. And I realized that he never actually spoke with him about Islam. So I said, what kind of da'wah that doesn't involve telling him about Islam? And he said, I'm just so worried I might say something that he might understand the wrong way. I might turn him away from the deen. So I'm trying to inspire him with my character first, to get him curious to ask me what religion I follow. And eventually that's exactly what he did. For 10 years he was careful not to confront the brother with a direct, straightforward message about Islam, just so that the brother is not offended or doesn't get the wrong message. Do you see the difference between ilm and hikmah? The gold ring just fell. So there's a huge difference between knowledge, the cumulative knowledge. You can accumulate knowledge all you want, but if you don't have wisdom to deliver that knowledge can actually become destructive, right? That we have used knowledge to produce weapons of mass destruction. Is that a good thing? Well, it was ma'rifah, but ma'rifah that is used unwisely, it becomes a complete, utter disaster. And that is a reflection of what Imam Malik ibn Anas, rahmatullahi alayh, used to say. Wisdom is to understand the deeper and most profound meanings of the deen, and how to share those meanings with people around you. Radiallahu anhu wa arda. That's what he used to say. So people know how to pray, they know how to fast, they know how to make wudu, they read the hadith, they recite the Qur'an. In fact, I think a lot of people read more hadith than Qur'an. Have you noticed that? People are always quick quoting the hadith. Well, I heard that there's this hadith that said, this and that. Because it's okay to quote the hadith without really using the proper accurate words. Because you can always say, أو كما قال, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, right? It's just something down those lines. But you cannot do that with the Qur'an. So they're always mute when it comes to quoting the Qur'an, but they always quote the hadith. And they take the hadith, they crumble it up, and they make it like a rock and they throw it in your face. And it actually injures you. Is that the proper wise usage of the hadith as an expression of ma'rifah, as an expression of knowledge? That's what they do. Imam Malik says that true wisdom is about understanding the deep, nuanced meanings of the deen and using the proper way to share that with people. You think of the age, you think of the gender, you think of religious affiliation, you think of ideology, you think of circumstances, of personal qualities and traits, everything before you talk. This is wisdom and not knowledge. There are so many people who have a tremendous amount of knowledge, but they do a lot more damage to the deen and to themselves than people who are utterly ignorant. Because people who are ignorant, they have nothing to share, so they mind their business. Well, some ignorant people just make stuff up. But most people who don't have knowledge, they just keep to themselves. But there are people who are deceived by an amount of knowledge they have, so they go around and they start hurling that knowledge basically at people. And following this thought, inshallah, and let me conclude tonight's khatira with this. Following that thought, wisdom is not about what you say, it's about how and when you say it, and in which manner and to which audience. Okay? Which means that people who spend time doing something, even if it's a good thing, right, that is not a priority, it is not wise. The scholars used to talk about fiqh al-awlawiyat, right, the fiqh of priorities. That is a branch of fiqh actually that people study. When the brother is calling the adhan, what is the priority of ibadah? right then and there is to do what? Tardidul adhan, is to actually say the adhan with the muadhin. There's no other act of worship. You can't just stand up and pray 2 rak'ahs while he's saying adhan, right? That is a wise understanding of the priorities of the deen, right? When the imam is giving the khutbah, what is the priority? To pray 2 rak'ahs or to listen to the imam? To listen to the imam, and this is the madhab I follow. Now there is one madhab that says you still need to pray your 2 rak'ahs, but if there's 15 other madhabs that say, no, sit down and listen to the imam, and you can pray 27 rak'ahs later if you want, but listen to the khutbah. Because you come to the masjid once a week for half an hour, and it's just that one khutbah, the only connection to the deen you have, listen to the khutbah. Don't stand up and bother people on the right and bother people on the left and block the view for people in the back, and you miss another 5 minutes of the khutbah because you were already late. That's why you're praying sunnah during the khutbah, and just make it painful for everyone, right? Sit down, listen to the khutbah, because that is the priority of your ibadah right then and there, and then you can pray your sunnah right after. Pray 4. إذا كان أحدكم مصليا بعد الجمعة فليصلي بأربع. If you would like to pray after Jum'ah, pray 4 rak'ahs if you'd like, as the Prophet ﷺ says. Pray 8. Pray more, right? But it is the hikmah of understanding the priorities, right? When it's 5 minutes before Maghrib, what is the most important thing to do? It's to make dua. Not recite Qur'an, make dua, right? When it's 3 minutes before Fajr, what is the most important thing to do? Again, supplications or making dua, right? When it's Salatul Dhuhr, and you're talking to someone about Islam, making da'wah to them, or you're giving a talk, or you're giving a lecture, or you have non-Muslims coming visiting the masjid, right? And you're talking to them about the deen, in an amazing show of interfaith solidarity, but it's Maghrib time. Then what is the priority at that very minute? It's to go upstairs and pray, right? It's the hikmah, it's the knowledge, the understanding of the wisdom on how to decide which of the deeds of Islam to be performed and which should be postponed, and so on and so forth, right? So workaholics, brothers and sisters in the community, work so much because you're spending hours of your day away from the children, and you were supposed to be with the children. That is unwise, right? People who don't exercise, who eat when they're not supposed to eat, right? Just because they're bored. You see this rampant problem in America, right? People 200, 300, 500 pounds walking around. It's a terrible epidemic that we live in that exists in our society, right? In fact, by the way, I don't know how many of you actually heard this before. This is one of the signs of the Day of Judgment. يقول النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم ويفشى فيهم السمن. Obesity spreads around them. That's one of the signs of the Day of Judgment. Subhanallah. If the Prophet ﷺ saw American society today, I'm not going to say anything. Right? But that is, when it's time for exercise, you exercise. It's not time for ice cream. Right? And that's, it's all about deciding on those priorities. Right? People who commit sin, who have malice and envy in their hearts against their brothers and sisters, yes, that's sinful behavior and haram, but it is also unwise. It is not hikmah. You have knowledge, but you're not implementing it properly. People who are so upset with each other, and they continue to be upset with each other and holding a grudge against each other for years. And we keep telling them, if you spend more than 3 days hating your brother and holding a grudge against your brother, it could reach a point where your salah is not going to be accepted anymore. It reaches a point where it becomes haram, but they continue to favor and enjoy the lust of that grudge at the expense of their very deen. You see, when I talk about hikmah, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't give it to you, you cannot be able to develop it on your own. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala needs a placeholder that can carry that hikmah, and that placeholder is your aql. If your hardware is disconnected from the power supply, hikmah can never come to you, right? If you're not using that mind, what is the number one illness of any device that causes to go bad? Lack of usage. You leave a computer for months, it goes bad. You leave your car for a long time, it just breaks down. Right? When you don't use your aql, then there is no placeholder for hikmah and then you're just a loose cannon, a tremendous amount of knowledge with no sense of direction whatsoever. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept our good deeds and to forgive our sins. I ask Him subhanahu wa ta'ala to increase our knowledge, to increase our wisdom, and to increase our resolve and will. I ask Him subhanahu wa ta'ala to elevate us in status and to increase our iman and to accept our good deeds in this month of Ramadan. Allahumma ameen. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم وأتوب إلى الله لعلكم تفلحون.